Hey, welcome into Restaurants in Pop Culture presented by Squared Sodas with your hosts. I'm Jensen Cummings. That is MC32.
What up?
At you today with RIP10. We're getting down to it. We're in episode 9 here of The Bear. So this is going to be memorable movie meals, grandma edition for our top 3. And then this episode 9, is Omelette. We're also going to talk restaurant cookbooks just a little bit because we've been seeing flashes of some dope ass cookbooks across this series. So we're also going to have guest co-host with us to help us rate episode 9. So watch out for Chef David from Sucio Talk podcast is going to be on with us as well. So let's get into this. Chris, you ready to rock?
I'm ready. Let's do
Feeling
it.
it? All right. We're going to talk top 3 all time presented by Tender Belly and mentioned grandmas, the Abuelita. This is where so much of our food culture comes from. So we want to pay a little homage to the nonas out there, the grandmas, the abuelitas, the women that really help us define culture and who has done that at a high level when it comes to movies. So number 3, what do you have for most memorable grandma meal in movie television history? What do you got?
All right. So this is actually a TV show, but for number three, I've got the meals, and there's several of them. So I'm not just picking just one, but there's several meals in Sons of Anarchy where Gemma makes meals for
Okay.
like the family and the kids, and she's very strategic, and a lot of times she uses these meals, she'll invite everybody to the house, and she like puts food in front of everybody, and it's always with an ulterior motive of like, okay, this is how I'm going to either a get these people who are beefing to stop beefing, or this is how I'm going to fish for
Uh,
information, or this is how I'm going to plant seeds or whatever. So like there's several instances throughout the show where she throws these big feasts for everybody, the kids, the adults, and everything. And then sometimes they explode, beef gets out of hand, and all that. But it's always like her trying to be the mastermind to bring that all together.
oh, so grandma's using food strategically,
Yeah,
both love and a little bit of a weapon. Okay, I could actually I could see that. I could see that playing
yeah,
out now that you say that a lot,
yeah,
right? Because you
right.
gotta have this captive audience. Everyone, we're sitting down as a family for dinner,
Hmm.
and we got to talk some shit out, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly, that's kind of what happened in the Christmas dinner episode of The Bear, right? It's like
Hmm.
we got to sit down. We know shit's about to go down. This is what we do because we are a family. Okay, I like that one. I'm going for number 3. I am going Coco. I'm going Abuelita. That's literally the name of the character in that.
Mm.
There's Mama Coco and Mama Imelda, but then it's just Abuelita, right? And played by Renee Victor, voiced by Renee Victor. And the scene where she goes, I asked if you would like more tamales. And there's this also this kind of love, but it's also forceful a little bit. You are going to eat these tamales. You're going to sit here as a family. We're going to enjoy it together. And this is the way that I say that I love you and that I am the matriarchy of this family. And I always have a lot of respect for this. Shout out to my grandmother Dora, who's from Mexico City. This is my mom's sister's husband's mom. They lived, 3 generations in the house. Always remember at all of the holiday times, she'd be cooking up tamales. There'd be gorditas with queso fresco, whatever it might be. Like that was a part of it. So we'd have the ham or the turkey and tamales as well. It was always a part of that. And I tell this story called the Four Grandmothers. I'm not going to get into it, but somebody make me tell you about my four grandmothers at some point. And with her, I learned early on that cooking was a team sport. They'd
Mm.
lay out the table out on the patio, and the family would help. It'd be like an assembly line or something. Like people would be involved in the process. They'd be peeling chilies or tomatillos. You'd be stuffing something. So it was a team sport, and I always remember learning that and applied that in the kitchen. A lot of times, you know, I'd grab 2 or 3 people, this, and like have
Hmm.
them all kind of assemble something together. One person could have done it, but there's a little shoulder to shoulder camaraderie that happens that moment. So I remember that from Abuelita Dora and Coco. Abuelita is getting my number 3 spot. All right, number 2 for you.
Number two for me is going to be, so this might be cheating because it was kind of a
Eat.
mom, but she's old enough to be grandma, so I'm calling it a grandma. Fuck it. This is a Goodfellas. So when Tommy and let's see, we got Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, um, and they just finished whacking somebody, and they drop it. They're bringing the body over to Joe Pesci's mom's house, which apparently was Martin Scorsese's actual mother. Um, and so she comes in, they're like trying not to wake her. She walks in, she's like, "Hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you in forever. Like, how you doing? How you doing?" And they're like, "Wow, what are you doing? Why are you awake?" And she's like, "Let me make you something to eat." And next thing you know, like she makes this full meal. It's like an Italian feast at like whatever time in the morning, and they're sitting there, and now it's daytime because I'm imagining it took a while for her to prepare, so it's like morning now, and they're sitting there having this Italian feast and playing. And then he's like, "Oh, Ma, I gotta borrow this knife real quick. Is that all right? Can I borrow this?" And because he's like, "I hit something with my car," and she's like, "Yeah, just bring it back." But it's something that
Totally
like
oblivious to what's really going on,
yeah,
huh?
and it's something that I found super common in a lot of the gangster films and TV shows, where it's like the guys will show up and the mother or the grandmother, whichever the matriarch is, will just be like, "I'm gonna make you something to eat," and they'll be like, "No, we're fine," and they're like, "No, no, 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 I'm gonna make you something. You're gonna eat," and then whatever time of day or night it is, they get made an entire feast, and everybody's sitting there eating the classics. Well, and it's usually after they did some shady shit.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll jump right in because my number two is absolutely Miss DeVito from Goodfellas. We are on the same page right there. I had that 100%. And I had to bring in Goodfellas. I've been trying to find an excuse to have the shaving of the garlic in prison with the X-Acto knife with the blade. And
Right.
so I'm glad we got Miss DeVito in here. Yeah. Martin Scorsese's mom, Catherine Scorsese, the whole scene is improvised. They just sat down
Yeah.
and said start start rapping about this, and so I absolutely think that was a brilliant scene, and you can tell she's just like there with the boys, like she would do as an Italian
Mhm.
mother that she is. I'm sure Martin Scorsese would bring the boys around all the time, and that would be the actual scene of what happened. So I'm with you, number two. All right, number one. What do you
All
got?
right, number one for me, hands down. Without this is like the first thing that came to mind when we even started talking about the subject is Big Mama in Soul Food. Irma P. Hall. We got a,
Yeah,
I mean, like I said,
yeah.
pretty hard hitting cast in general. Vivica Fox, Vanessa Williams, Nia Long, Mekhi Phifer, and it's just it's it's a very poignant, like it's it's kind of an iconic movie, and it's an iconic feel. Like a lot of people, when you think about soul food and you think about family camaraderie and just like the vibe of like the women, especially like cooking all together while the guys are in the front watching meals or whatever, or watching games or what have
Fucking
you.
around watching
And
football, talking shit,
yeah,
and women are
yeah,
doing the
and the
work. Yeah, yeah,
grandma's
yeah.
like, and the grandma's trying to teach the younger ones how to cook properly, and like saying, you don't measure, like you cook from the soul. You don't measure. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You cook to taste. We don't use recipes and stuff like that. And like I remember just watching that meal, and just you feel like you're eating it just by watching it.
Mm.
You feel like you're part of the family. The way that they shot the scenes, the food scene, especially the first dinner that they're having, the way that they shot it, and the vibe, the music, people are dancing and cooking at the same time, and there's like people running in and out of the like kids running in and out of the room, and it's just the entire scene, the scenery, the food, the music, it all just comes together so well. And it's all held together by Big Mama. And that's like the dynamic of a lot of the black families is like Big Mama held everything together.
Yeah,
And
The
so, yeah,
Rock.
it was, yeah,
Yeah, the grandma and the meal, the family meal, that is like the rock. That's the nucleus of the
yeah,
family, which is what I love. Absolutely love it, which is why we talk about how many times in movies they don't pay respect, right? When the family
hmm,
gets together, too often, everyone's in a rush. Nobody eats. They blow up
yep,
before anybody eats the food. They're on the way out the door. They're wasting so much food. We've talked about that a lot. So the fact that there's some reverence there in soul food, much respect for that. All right. I went I went comedy. I went the other way. I am going
Okay.
with The Wedding Singer, Grandma
Okay.
Rosie from The Wedding Singer, played by Ellen Albertini Dow, rest in peace, who the meatballs. Oh man, the meatballs. When she's just hold out your hands and puts the meatballs into Adam Sandler's hands and says, I want to see you take a bite. And takes a bite of the meatball in his hand, giant meatballs. That to me is one of the most memorable. Instantly, same thing. When I thought of grandmas and food, it was instantly her. And then, I mean, we got the MC in the house right here. I mean, rate her Rapper's Delight out of 10. Come on. Like, what a great Rapper's Delight edition that was. Let's go.
Legit. Yeah.
So Grandma Rosie, number one for me. That was absolutely iconic. All right. Great top three there. Everybody in the comments, let us know. DM us, comment. We want to know what some of the best grandma, most memorable meals are for you in movie television history, or for you personally. What are those meals that grandma held it down when you came over to her house, when she visited you? What are those absolute musts, those childhood food memories? I know we all have them. All right. No further ado. Let's get into this. Let's get into the Bear episode 9. We're going to bring in Chef David Guilloty of Sucio Talk to join us. Let's get you in here. Hey, Chef, what's going on? Oh, we got you muted. Nope.
It's always somebody.
Always something. Doing the shows.
Hello.
Oh, there we go.
Hey.
I was trying to catch up on the show, and I was like, let me not make any noise over here and embarrass myself on this show in the background. So here we
Good.
are. How are you, man?
We're doing great. This is great to have you. I know you've been hot on the tail of what's been happening in the Bear. And you streamed the whole first season or second season or something?
No. So I'm streaming the food award shows. I've been doing
that's what
James,
it was.
Yeah, James Beard, the other one that just happened, the top 50. And I feel like, so I think that it's time for people like us, to get into that kind of realm of things, because I watched the show and I got to say, the commentary, no offense to those people, but it was kind of whack. You know what I mean? I feel like you need industry insiders to be able to be more animated, know about the people. It's just like sports, right? You got commentators are people who have done it. And I think we're starting to change that tide where it's like we're narrating what's going on with our friends and our knowledge versus journalism.
Yeah, I think when you see everybody, all of our homies that are up there, we're accepting James Beard Awards. I know we all have friends that have and do, and all of a sudden we turn into something different, So I think I could not agree more that sometimes I think we lose ourselves when it comes to oh wait, we're supposed to be more presentable. It's no, we're supposed to be ourselves. So
exactly.
much respect to that for sure. You're opening a restaurant.
Yeah,
and this is what's happening in the Bear right now as we're talking, especially in this episode. We're going to get into that in just a moment. Give us the 30 seconds. Tell us about the restaurant and your emotional state. Are you okay?
I'm calmer than I would be if I had stayed cooking professionally in restaurants, hardcore, and then had gone into this. I gave myself
some respite.
Yeah, 2 years of personal chefing, traveling, doing this podcast, kind of trying to blow this up or build it up, And I think that's given me more of a perspective, and I took that from Gordon Ramsay. He's like, bro, it's okay. Just go for 2 years, be a personal chef, come back to the game. If you tell any chef that, I feel like in their mind, they're like, nah, you'll never come back. It's so hard to come back. And I will say it's halfway true. It's definitely I went and staged at a.
You get too smart. You're like, wait a minute.
Exactly. So you're staging and you're not as spry as you used to be. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh fuck,
we're all getting older,
rusty. David. Exactly, right? So I'm like, how do we preserve being a chef and having an influence over the industry? And I think this is it right here.
And restaurant name, location. Give us a little bit of that.
Okay, so we got the Rustic SF. All right, 215 Church Street. in the Castro Mission area of San Francisco.
You're in it.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're doing is pizza pasta, right? This is the food that I grew up line cooking, right? This is the food that you kind of learn in that, like, chop house or whatever you call it. Trattoria Simpatico in Jamestown, shout out. And so this kind of came up out of nowhere. I was doing the right thing, sending resumes, going to do tastings, and I'm just not that guy. My career was based on walking through the back door and just grabbing the job and taking it, And so I'm doing it the right way. It's not working out. I get kind of angry and I go on Craigslist and I find this ad looking for an executive chef. And so I basically, had this meeting and I was like, I'll do this if I get ownership. And I think it was the first time where I had that kind of romantic you walk into this new space and you talk to the general manager for a couple hours and you hit it off and you're like, wow, this is the shit that you see on like movies. You know what I mean? And then
like this.
Exactly. And then I talked to some of my boys and they were like, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? You fail, Thomas Keller failed, it wasn't, his French Laundry wasn't the first restaurant he opened and failed at. Right. So I think we take age as a number of like, he was the youngest Michelin chef to ever, grace this earth. I'm not interested in that. I think this game is a long game. And if I get my Michelin stars at a later age, I'm not going to be upset. So I think that I'm looking at the game and I'm saying, Thomas Keller was able to make the French Laundry and then build his Bouchon to pay for the French Laundry, right?
Right.
I'm building my Bouchon so I can pay for my French Laundry. Right?
Reverse engineering that tip.
Exactly, because you learn that in fine dining there's no money, right? And so I'm trying to figure out a way to make it happen for myself and do it in a smart way. Andres Flores from Snail Bar in Oakland always told me, he was like, I wonder why we've gotten so far in this game and we haven't learned how to retire. We either retire by killing ourselves, by getting so injured that we can't work, or becoming angry and bitter because we can work and we feel like nobody could do it like us, right? I feel like the time is now to learn how to let go and understand that it's the cooks, really, the younger generation, that's going to hold us up. Like, we ain't shit anymore. It doesn't matter that I can make a foam or a nice, can I teach someone to cook in the way that I can cook? And so I'm looking at it. Exactly, right? I'm looking at it. I'm looking around. I'm like, you see all these Italian restaurants, Indian restaurants. I'm like, who cooks the food? Latino Americanos, right? So I'm like, let's take that influence and let's do a little bit of Latino Americano inspired Italian food, where we're not, it's funny because the restaurant's called The Rustic, but literally that's the only thing rustic about it is the name. You know what I mean? Like, we're about to turn up. Like, I got fried chicken on the menu. Like, I'm doing, Boricua tapas at the bar, and I'm not telling nobody. I'm just gonna do it because the game has changed and the rules have changed, right? So it's no longer like, what's your concept? It's, do you have a good atmosphere? And I feel like we can win in that way with the neighborhood.
All right, Castro neighborhood, look out. Get at the Rustic SF coming. I'm not going to ask you when it's going to open because it's always harder, takes longer, and costs more money. I know that. You know what I mean? So we're not even going to ask you, but look out. Stay on the look. Make sure you follow Sucio Talk podcast. Of course you were. You're supposed to open 2 months ago. I know. I know what's happening right now. So we've been talking about the countdown, how adorable it is that they say 12 weeks out on the Bears. Like, give me a fucking break. You don't know when the hell you're opening.
Nope.
10 days out. Come on. You're not getting that certificate of occupancy. Your liquor license is getting delayed. We know that the health inspector is going to flag you for something. We know what's up. All right. As always, I want to show a super little quick clip to kind of get us in the mode of thinking about this episode 9 out of 10 of season 2 of The Bear, called Omelette. Let's check this out.
Okay. 15 minutes stagger.
30 minutes till we're packed.
45 minutes to run the shit. For the guy?
For the guy. Our mother of victory.
Hi, there is. Chef Sidney!
Yes. Ready? Corn?
Throw shit now, Captain. Say the word, Chef.
Let her rip.
Yes.
Woo!
Yeah, the energy, man. I love it. Getting a little AC/DC. We've been talking about the soundtrack. They've been dominating with the soundtrack, going from Pearl Jam into AC/DC. Smooth transition in this episode. Loving that energy. We know that feeling. You're about to have that feeling again.
I know.
Sucio. You know what I mean? Like, that's for real. When you hit that unlock for the first time, it is exhilarating and fucking petrifying. So appreciate them putting that energy. All right, as always, we're going to drop our score, our rating out of 10. David, we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and we'll drop it. Are you ready?
All right.
3, 2, 1. 8.2.
8.4.
Okay. What do you got?
5.
Oh, we're right there. 8.2, 8.4, 8.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. We're there. Well, look, we'll get into all the nitty and gritty. It's high level. Let's start high level. Okay. David, for you, what garnered that 8.5 score? That's a high score, baby.
Honestly, this season, I fell in love with the fact that, and forgive me, I forget the exact names. Richie, when he goes to that restaurant, and he has that journey of, he finds it, he like takes the punch bowl and pours it on himself. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's what it takes to be great in those places. And I think in this episode, all his training kind of shows through. You know what I mean? And that's I think the highlight for me. It's like, in this industry, a guy like Richie can win if they want it enough.
Yeah. We're not done yet, but this is Richie's season.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Right, Chris? Like, he absolutely is the standout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, I didn't see that.
I did not
panning
expect
out that way.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I definitely did not expect it. I thought they were going to push him further into the dirtbag category that he kind of was. That know-it-all dirtbag kind of thing that he had in season 1, holding on to the past, all that. But man, he is leaps and bounds. And so for sure. All right, Chris, high level. What for you? What made this an 8.4?
Just all of the things starting to culminate a little bit. Like, you still got the background, the behind the scenes issue with Sid and her dad trying to lovingly dissuade her from going down this path again. You got Carm, who's dealing with the battle internally between the positivity going on in his life and the stress and the history of, like, his trauma, and they're all trying to battle for what's going to get the most attention while he's stressing over the fact that they're about to open, and so it's like, he's thinking about Claire, he's thinking about his mom, he's thinking about the fridge guy, all that stuff, like, all at the same time. And you got Richie, who's like ready to, it's like, it's game time now. He's like, this is my moment. He's ready for his moment. You got Marcus, who's starting to, like, he's showcasing, they got the savory cannoli that they were talking about previously, and just like him showcasing and stuff. Yeah. You got Tina, who's starting to show her, her what she's learned a little bit in culinary school and all this things. So you're starting to see all of these little elements starting to, like, build the ball fire that's about to be service.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's just like, I like seeing it's the first tie of the knot being tied up or the bow for the end of the season. Like, service, the first service is going to be like the tying of the knot, but we're starting to see that first scoop right now. And
David, we've only been watching one episode at a time. It's been really hard to be disciplined so that our rating and review of each episode over the last 10 weeks has been truly just what's happening in that snapshot.
Right.
And so that we weren't influenced by the other one. So we don't know what happens in episode 10, right? So for me, here's some of the high level. The opening of a restaurant is what my whole career has been. I've opened, 30 restaurants or so throughout my career, from the cook, chef owner, consultant, all of that. So the energy and the vibe is me. I love it. I'm all about it. Cicero now has become one of the most powerful voices in this show for that dynamic. Every time Cicero comes in, it's like we're about to have some truth, some real talk about where you're at, not the fantasy of chaos menu, the reality of the business. And we do not spend enough time and effort understanding the business because we're a bunch of fucking cooks. We want to be in the kitchen, right? We want to have that energy and vibe. And the fact that Cicero keeps pulling them back to it in a way that's like, I don't want to shut it down and sell it, but I will, because this is a business. And so when he says to Carmi, it's all you, that is an intense feeling. When it is you, it's your reputation, your name, your money, your livelihood, your house on the line. It is a lonely and desperate place, even though you're excited as hell. And the fact that Cicero is talking about that, I think is important, because I think we romanticize opening a restaurant. Culinary schools, I've talked a lot about this. You're guilty of this, of painting a picture that's not the reality of this restaurant industry. The Food Network effect has affected a lot of us. And a lot of us have not handled it well, myself included. So Cicero, I'm all about that. I also have been interested in seeing this episode, right, directed by Christopher Storer, the founder or the creator of this. Joanna Callow, who's an executive producer and showrunner, co-wrote this episode with Christopher. So they were pulling out the big guns, and I could tell there was a lot of depth and intensity in this episode that I thought was really important. And so the fact that there's a lot of sports references, I've noticed now too in this episode. We have Mike Krzyzewski. Why is Mike Krzyzewski in every episode of this? I don't understand it, but they're making some serious points of that. They also have Our Lady Victory, pray for us. That's a Notre Dame kind of mantra prayer. And then we have the whole Bartman story. Respect to them for shouting out Steve Bartman for not being the reason that the Cubs didn't go to the World Series, everybody. All right, don't scapegoat that guy. So those are some of the things at a high level that were interesting to me. So I think we're on the same page here as far as it goes. I want to get into a couple nitty-gritty things. All right. I want to talk cookbooks for just a moment, because my friend Kat Kinsman over at Food and Wine wrote an article. Definitely check this out, where she told me that she spent 59 of 63 hours pausing and going through and finding 190 cookbooks that are featured in this series. And so you got a couple like they actually not just showed them in the background, they stopped and showed, and you saw Moss's cookbook and things like that. They made a point of that in this episode, where they kind of hovered on it when Richie is working on whatever he's working on, right? And so cookbooks, I've talked about this a little bit. I think cookbooks are now memories. I'm literally looking at the ad hoc cookbook right in front of me that Thomas Keller signed. It's literally holding up my laptop right now that I'm looking at. And so it's a memory for me. But I've gotten rid of every single other cookbook that I have. I've paid them for it. I've given them away to people, because to me the utility of them was, putting them on a table, right, with highlighters and saying let's get inspired for menu. Like, now we can surf the internet. So like cookbooks need to be a story. They need to be a memory. They need to be more than just utility of here's a bunch of recipes, because I can find that online. I can have ChatGPT go find that to me. So I wanted to get you guys' quick take on cookbooks. How you guys feel about cookbooks? David, what do you think?
So it's funny you mentioned that. I'm researching this cookbook right now, since I'm getting into Italian restaurants, called Avicius, and it's basically it's the Roman guide culinaire, basically. And so it was written in Latin, actually. So I think it predates the French, cuisine and the brigade and all that. I think it's like 1760 it was written. And so
going way back.
Yeah, dude. So it's nuts, like what you uncover, just like, because I'm doing this Italian restaurant, and I'm like, you know what, man, let me just hop in to this culture and just get to know it,
For Italian. They weren't Italians.
Well,
then,
yeah, exactly.
Right? Like,
this is like in old
roots.
school Italy, just like, let's survive. But this dude was pretty wealthy, and he just ate a lot. Like, all of his meals were feasts. And so he just had a lot of money. So he was like the first foodie, basically, and a gourmand, they called him. So he basically wrote this book, and it's been translated so many times. Now you can find it in English. but it was originally.
I never even heard of this.
Exactly, and it's like,
whoa.
It's like just like you look around now and you see that our education is flawed, right? Public school and whatever the schooling system is.
Yep.
Now you see this whole thing over here, and you're like, okay, like why didn't we learn about? Why wasn't Italian cuisine and Asian cuisine focused on enough in culinary school? It's always like, here's this French way because that's the only way to do it.
That's it.
You know? And so I think that being a personal chef opened my eyes to this. Like, I used to be like, okay, well, we're toasting the spices in just a little bit, right? Because you don't want to go too much. And then you make Indian recipes and it's like, throw it in there, burn the butter, have no fear, you know?
Let it
and
go.
It's like, why? What is with the rules, you know? So I do understand French cuisine. I respect French cuisine. That's where, like, you know, we all get the brigade and how kitchens work and all that. But I do think that there is more in the background. So I'm looking at this book of Isius and it's insane. Also, shout out to Diasporican Cookbook. She just won a James Beard this past award show, and she was featured on it. She was featured on it as well in the show in the background. She posted it. It was like a very, like, you know, like a flash. But I mean, how proud must you be of that moment?
Oh, come on.
That's
a feeling for sure.
Insane.
Chris, for you, cookbooks.
For me, cookbooks are like I don't use cookbooks the way that a lot of people traditionally use them. I know a lot of chefs that are very well read, and they'll pick up a cookbook and they'll read it from cover to cover, right? But you've cooked with me. I'm a very freestyle kind of chef, and what I use cookbooks for is similar to, like, when you look at an MC who's a great freestyler. One of the dope things that shows you that they're a great freestyler is they'll start rhyming, right? And then they'll have people show them stuff or give them stuff, and they'll just start rapping about what they see. Cookbooks are similar to that for me. So when I look at when I'm opening a cookbook, I glance at what I'm looking at, and then what I'm looking at gives me an idea of something else that I can do. But it's like either the ingredient gives me inspiration, or the type of dish it is gives me an inspiration or something like that. But I don't dive super deep into like what the recipe is, and especially because I haven't really been into trying to do Michelin food. So I haven't really, it's been more so about what the image and the flavor profile does for me internally, and what I get from that makes me be like, okay, let me drop it like this, let me do something like this. And then so I use them for inspiration visually, because the visual sparks something else for me, and that helps me get the freestyle going of whatever I'm going to make.
Yeah, it really is like a freestyle for you. You're like Harry Mack going off of the dome in a TikTok video. Yes, legit. I like it. Okay, a couple more things I want to get into. First off, we've only been watching one episode at a time, but you can't help but hear about things. And so I kept hearing about the omelet. We've been talking about how we're not sure that Sidney can cook with what's been shown in this season. She can't season something or over season or what. I don't know what it is, but the omelet was not that impressive of a technique. I was like really hoping, because Courtney Storr, shout out to Courtney Storr, who is the culinary director for this thing. All the rest of the food looks really good. And I kept hearing about this omelet. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be this beautiful scene. It's going to be like Paul Bocuse having people cook an egg for their stage. Like, it's going to be that. And it was super clumsy. And then we talked last week about the chive test, Christopher. Yeah. And those chives would not have passed my chive test to be able to be offered a job on the spot and get paid what you want. So I hope that Sidney can cook. I don't know. What did you guys think about the omelet?
When I saw that omelet, at first I was like, it's funny because I saw it come out the pan, and then I looked away for a second because I was like, oh, she's about to toss it and do a new one. And then she just kind of fixed it and started and I was like, oh, that's the keeper. Oh, all right. Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm like
bunch of chefs over here just judging the hell out of that omelet, huh?
I'm definitely looking forward to seeing if she does some miraculous turnaround during the service or something.
Oh.
I don't see it, man. I think we're gonna see her struggle for a bit. They got to get another season out of it, you know.
Yeah,
I think so.
Sure.
Yeah. I absolutely think so. So yeah, the omelet didn't do it for me. And I've been hearing about it and I love it. I was like, yes, all of this chaos menu, all of these things that they're trying to do, and it's going to be an omelet that like brings you back to this is why I cook. And they've tried to do that. They missed. They haven't missed in that kind of food as a relationship dynamic in the show very often. And they definitely missed for me on the omelet. And people I know are going to be messaging me about those chives. So let me know about the chives. Real quick, I couldn't remember if I had seen them before, and I remember thinking that where are the delis with the drinking water? Because in season 1, Carmi's sitting on the milk crate, drinking out of that deli was the fucking meme of the season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no delis, and all of a sudden both Carmi and Sidney were drinking out of them. I was like, have I just not noticed them? But I definitely noticed them. So the delis, they were leaving us hanging a little bit, making us want that deli. They brought it in episode 9 for sure. Okay, real quick, I wanted to touch on this before we end, because we talked about a little bit of the kind of the tics and some of the ways that we have compulsive things in kitchens. How I always had, ladles to the back right, and pan handles were always lined up, and towels folded, and all of these different things. There was something that they showcased in this episode that I hadn't realized before. They talked about right-handed versus left-handed, basically. And Christopher is left-handed. Yes. And I know. And so I wanted to hover on this for a moment, because what I just realized, Chris, is that Tina is left-handed. So she wouldn't have taken Carmi's right-handed knife. Like it's a completely different setup of the bevel. And so there was that let's fucking go moment where she gets his knife and that whole dynamic. But I noticed she's cutting that fish, she's left-handed. And so I feel like did they miss that a little bit? And then the left-handed side, remember when you were running the line, I always had back to the right. But if it's your line, it's your line. And if you wanted those ladles, they were back left. They just all had to be back left, right? And so I wanted to get your perspective on that as the left-hander in the kitchen made for right-handers.
I cheered. I was like, no, you see how it feels when he was like, why is it on the left? Because every kitchen I roll in is designed for right-handed people. And some of the stations where I've sank the hardest have been because depending on how the line is set up, if you're in a central station where you can just reverse things, but it's not fucking anything else up, it's easy. But if you're like against a wall or something like that, and things have to be that way and you can't change them, then it's like impossible for me to get my rhythm if I'm used to using other hands. And so like trying to teach myself, and it's like sometimes it's impossible to get a rhythm when you're a left-handed person using everything's on the right and everything is opposite. And you can't. There's not a way to jerry rig it to make it more a lot easier for you. And so some of the times that I've failed the hardest on stations have been the stations where I couldn't remix them in a way that made it easier for me. So when I saw him freaking out, I was like, yes, I felt vindicated a little bit, because that's been my entire career, is just having to figure shit out. Being a left-handed person in a right-handed kitchen.
Dude, I saw that and instantly I was really happy for you that there was a moment where it's like, well, now we can at least talk about it. Because we never talk about that. Like we don't talk about enough of the issues. And we mentioned that last week when we talked about the potential for compulsions in the kitchen. And does that affect our mental health? Does it affect substance abuse? These different things that many of us have struggled with. And we don't talk about a dynamic like that. And for you, that's your life.
Yeah. And the thing is that while I can see what you're talking about with Tina and the knife, there's also a dynamic of the thing where a lot of people don't really know about knives like that. Like if you have a lot of amateur chefs where they come in, especially if they're working in a place where they all have those Cisco knives, the white-handled ones, and they're all double beveled, and then suddenly you're given one that may be for a right-handed person, but you don't know any better. You're going to use it like any other knife. And there's been a lot of people that I've had to tell the difference because they try to use my knife, and I'd be like, no, this is just for me because I'm left-handed. And they'd be like, what's the difference? And so And especially people who are right-handed, they just a lot of times automatically think that everybody's right-handed. So it could have been a thing where Carmi assumed, hey, I'm just gonna give you this knife, and not even really paid attention to the fact that she's left-handed.
I like to say on behalf of
left-handed,
right? On behalf of right-handers, I'm so sorry. Okay,
I know.
I didn't know it was a microaggression.
We're like, what are you mad about? Oh, damn, that's like your whole life.
Man.
You tried doing everything left-handed, David. We couldn't do it.
Exactly.
I've had this fantasy of filling my restaurant with nothing but left-handed knives and left-handed fish spatulas, and watching people try to figure it out.
Like something's weird about this place.
It's not quite right, and that's why I said that. I didn't realize she was left-handed. There's been multiple scenes, but super tight of cutting. And I never thought about it until this one. You see her cutting the fish, and then you see her holding up that knife, right? I was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that she's left-handed, and instantly all that stuff went. And for sure, that Japanese knife, that would be a single bevel style of knife.
Yeah.
And so that would be beveled for a right-handed person. That would be beveled for him. Yeah. So you could turn that bevel, but that knife like that.
When people try to teach me, it's been difficult. Like when I was at Ototo and Kenta was trying to teach me how to slice sashimi, and it's like all Japanese chefs for the most part are trained to be right-handed, whether you're left-handed or not. Like you have to learn that way. And so me being left-handed and him trying to like show me the right angles for cooking or cutting the fish and butchering the fish Japanese style, like it was very difficult for him and for me, because he's trying to teach it in a way that he's never had to before. And I'm trying to learn something that I've never had to learn before, in a manner that's engineered by design specifically for right-handed people.
Oh, to the point where speaking of the four grandmothers, here's number 2. My Oba-chan from Kyoto, Japan, was trained away from being left-handed. She was naturally left-handed, and they wouldn't allow it in Japan. Especially from her being an aristocratic family. They broke her of being left-handed so that she was right-handed. They also, like bound her feet. She has tiny little feet and like walks pigeon-toed. So like it intense in the culture there. So the fact that there was frustration there, I'm sure that he's never dealt with somebody who's left-handed before. Like that would not surprise me at all. That was, if you were left-handed, you were thought to be, inferior, like that level of you're left-handed. So David, oh man, so good to have you on this episode. Feeling the vibe, so happy for you and petrified for you opening this restaurant. We know what you're in, what you're going through. We appreciate you still being a voice for the industry with Sucio Talk. Everybody make sure and check out Sucio Talk
for sure.
And the whole energy. I love that you're out there repping for Puerto Rico and all of the cooks that actually cook all of the Chinese food, the Japanese food, the Italian food, the French food, like the real cooks, the OGs of the kitchen. So last thought, you take us out.
So last thought is thank you very much. I feel like you are also a voice in this industry, and as I get to know your partner here, like I'm grateful for you guys to let me on. I feel like we need more of this. Community is important. We lost it at a certain point as chefs, trying to be so competitive, but I think we're coming back into the community. So suciotalk.com, therusticsf.com, come check me out. And we're going to be doing Chef AM Radio in the Castro starting in October. So you're going to see me maybe 3 days a week with chefs from the area. Anybody could come through, Psalms, dishwashers, like, let's go.
That's it. That's how you build. That's how you build community, man. And beyond, like bring the person who started the dog grooming business in and be like, we're a neighborhood. We're simpatico right now. Like we're all on a hustle. We're all on a struggle. And I love that. That's how you build community. So anybody comes in that community and said, who is the mayor of the Castro?
Hey, Sucio, baby. Let's go.
That's Sucio Talk. All right, everyone. Great episode. Restaurants and Pop Culture presented by Squared Sodas. Appreciate everybody. Let us know how we did and can do better next week. Episode 10. That's it. Appreciate y'all.